I have a bad habit of clubbing whenever my life gets too much to handle. It doesn't matter how much is in my bank account at the time. If I feel my shoulders growing far too heavy, I head down to the loudest club in the city. Being a guy, I never thought there would be any danger of getting trashed or finding my way back home. I sometimes brought whoever my drunk self wanted back to my apartment. So far, I hadn't been stabbed or robbed because of these poor decisions. I kept saying I need to stop, that bringing home strange men or women would bite me in the ass one day. And yet, when that stress came back, I called up my best friend so we could hit up the newest club. I barely remember anything about that night. One second, I was drinking at the bar, chatting up a cute group, and then I woke up in a hospital room feeling like death. I think dying may feel better. I soon got freaked out over not understanding how I got there and what happened the night before. When I felt a bit better, my doctor explained what had happened. My drink got spiked, and thankfully, someone noticed. They never found out who did it, but a man called an ambulance and sat with me along with some witnesses until the paramedics arrived. If he didn't make the quick call, I might have been dragged off by whoever tampered with my drink. They got a description of the man, but not his name. I left the hospital after a day and thanked God my country had free health care. I couldn't imagine what the bill might be if I lived somewhere else. I was asked to give any statements I could to the police after I felt ready. A few months back, a man was not so lucky as I was. They found his body dumped by the side of the river, and his last known location was at a local club. He said he wasn't feeling well after a single drink and left. They found his body shortly afterwards, and he, oddly enough, looked very similar to myself. The police had a theory there may be a killer with a certain set of preferences out there, drugging men at bars. Even if I told the cops what day and time I was at the club, the information might help in the future. I fully planned on going into a station after I got back home, but the man who approached me derailed my plans. I didn't have anything to eat at home and didn't feel like paying insane delivery fees. A Walmart was only a few blocks away. I bought eggs and bread, not really wanting much else. I heard someone calling my name on my walk home, but I didn't recognize the person trying to catch up. "Tracy, are you feeling better?" I let the stranger stop a few steps between us. He wore a fake-looking smile. I took a step back, not trusting him in the slightest. After a few seconds, it clicked. The hospital staff said the man who called the ambulance was a middle-aged man with gray hair and dressed in a gray suit. The person who stopped me fit that description. Are you the guy from the club the other night?" I asked, my voice still holding some suspicion. "That'll be me. I'm glad you're doing better and got out so soon. I wasn't sure what got slipped into your drink," he said, that same fake smile on his face. "How do you know my name?" I pressed. "Well, I checked your wallet that night. I figured you might respond better if I acted familiar with you. I wanted to keep you awake as long as possible, but the whole thing does feel sketchy, right? You're probably assuming I was the one who drugged you." This time, his smile looked real. His tired gray eyes wrinkled slightly from the expression. Somehow, him saying I suspected him made me relax, a little. He still could be the killer on the loose, but it didn't feel like it. At least, I was willing to hear him out. "Are you free later today? I would like to speak to you about what happened. There's a coffee shop we can sit and talk if you're comfortable with that," he asked. He paused to pull out a cigarette, but didn't light it, not wanting to bother me with the smoke. I chewed on my lip, not knowing why he wanted to talk. I should have thanked him for saving my life, but there was just something so unnerving about him. "Are you a reporter or something like that?" I asked, not knowing why he might be interested. He wasn't a cop, that much was for certain. "Or something," he replied. His eyes almost appeared darker, and his smile gave me the chills. I felt my face flush from letting myself get intimidated by this man. He appeared amused by my reaction, which made me get slightly pissed off. "Fine, I'll see you at 4, I huffed and started to stomp off. He didn't follow behind, which was a good sign. Meeting him again wasn't ideal. However, I didn't thank him for calling an ambulance that night. He deserved that much. No matter how weird of a vibe he gave me, I needed to show up at the coffee shop. I hated when people said 4 when they really meant 10 after 4. The place was fairly busy, which was good. It made me feel safer being around him. I ordered a simple coffee, and he did the same. We found a table by a window to sit at. I fiddled with my plastic lid, waiting for him to explain why he wanted to meet. "Are you aware you're not the first person to have their drink spiked lately?" he started. I realized then that I didn't know his name. I nodded, then tried to think of a natural way to ask for him to introduce himself. "A man was murdered, right? Who are you? I mean, why are you interested?" I said, trying to keep a light tone in my voice. I didn't want to upset him or make him feel as if I was as nervous as I felt. He took a long sip of his drink, and I wondered how he didn't find it hot. I couldn't drink mine yet due to the temperature. "I go by Graves," he started. The name made me raise an eyebrow. "Really?" His face twitched into a smile, amused by my reaction. "Yes, really. It's fitting for someone like myself. You see, I deal in death. That man was not the first victim, nor the second. There have been 5 murders, 4 bodies yet to be discovered. You were almost the 6th. I shrank in my seat from his statement and shook my head. How the hell did this guy know about victims the cops didn't? Was he the killer? Then why bring me to a public place? To gloat? Or was he just a crazy guy trying to take the credit? He also could be a guy just getting off on messing with me. Any of those options weren't very pleasant. I looked over to start plotting my escape plan and felt my blood turn cold. The somewhat busy coffee place, well, suddenly became empty. The moment my head turned, all the sound and people disappeared. Only myself and Graves remained in the shop. I shot to my feet, panic starting to overtake my body. I didn't take a sip of my drink yet, so he couldn't have gotten a friend at the shop to drug me. Then what? How the hell did he pull this off? "What just—" I said, voice shaking. My eyes landed on the other man who sat, appearing relaxed, in the hard plastic chair. He held up his coffee to gesture me to sit back down. I refused, debating on to make a run for it or not. "I believe the one who drugged you is going to make a second attempt on your life. I am able to protect you if you make a deal with me." Graves spoke, and his voice changed. He no longer made any attempt to sound friendly, but let his true, rough tone come through. My hands shook, making me shove them into my pockets, not wanting this man to see my fear. Was he really a man? Or some type of monster? "How do I know you aren't the killer?" "There is no proof of 5 victims, only 1. You could be lying to get my soul or something," I snapped. A snort of a laugh slipped through his defenses. He tried to cover it up with the back of his hand, but failed. My face got hot from being mocked in such a way. "I am a killer. I won't deny that. I am not after your soul. My target is simply the one other killer who has their eyes set on you. If you do not trust me, fine. Leave and take your chances, but don't say I didn't warn you. I wasn't going to stick around and listen to this. Movement drew my eyes to the window next to the small table. Instead of seeing people outside, the world looked to be a gray sea of fog. A shape moved in the fog, and I squinted trying to see what it might be. I regretted focusing outside when a creature pressed a face against the glass so hard and suddenly it rattled the window. A skull peeked through a half-rotten face of some sort of animal, maybe a bear, but it was hard to tell. I let out a shocked gasp, my feet nearly tripping over each other trying to take a step back. Graves sat, a smile still on his face. Leaving meant going into that sea of fog with those creatures inside it, but I no longer wanted to stay around this man. I turned to bolt from the coffee shop, heart racing, wanting the entire encounter to be just a nightmare. I burst through the doors. A man sitting in his car out front gave me an odd look. The world appeared normal the moment I left the small shop. I quickly looked over my shoulder trying to spot Graves at the table I just left. My abandoned drink sat at the now empty table. I was not going to go back inside to get it. I rushed home, locking my door, and placed a chair in front of the doorknob as if that might help. I really didn't know what else to do. I didn't have the money to stay at a hotel. Even if I did, then what? I couldn't run forever. I only prayed that refusing the offer meant I never needed to see that monster again. I just needed to never go out drinking again. Problem solved, right? It sounded like the killer targeted random men out drinking. The killer may have gotten my name the same way Graves did, but would not have gotten my address. That is, if there was a killer and Graves wasn't making that all up, trying to make a false deal. I didn't know what that man was, and I didn't want to find out. I needed to move. It wasn't as if I could do that overnight. Unable to really think of anything else to do, I called my best friend, asking if he could stay the night. A monster might be out for my life, or a serial killer. Or I snapped and my mind was making all of this up. Whatever this turned out to be, I didn't want to be alone. I've known Lucas for the past 2 years. We work in the same company, but in different departments. I do IT and he does accounting, or something along those lines. I quickly found that we could talk about pretty much anything. On occasion, we go out drinking, but nothing else ever happened between us. I preferred it to stay that way. I didn't like hooking up with my coworkers. A girl dated someone in the office, and when they broke up, it became a great deal of gossip. When she started dating a different guy in the office, 2 weeks after the breakup, that turned into such a big deal, everyone still talked about it. I didn't want my personal life to be on display like that, or have people judging me for my actions outside of work. Lucas came over, asking how I was feeling. He saw me get loaded up in the ambulance the night before. I almost forgot he was at the club that night. He only went out to humor me. I barely saw him drink, and he quickly went home, depending on how loud the bar was. I told him I was doing fine, and the night could have ended up far worse than a day in the hospital. I didn't think I could tell him about the run-in with Graves. He would think I was crazy, so I kept it to myself. What happened the other night? A guy stayed with you before you went to the hospital. Are you all right? You've been acting pretty weird. I'm worried that he did something to you, Lucas mentioned. We were sitting on the couch after I ordered some pizza. I offered to pay for it, but Lucas got to the door with cash before I did. He's always been good when it came to paying for food or drinks when we hung out, even though I thought I made slightly more than him. Oh, no, nothing like that happened, I assured him. He spotted I was acting weird right away, and there were other people watching us. I might have been drugged, but I wasn't alone at any point for someone to try something. Lucas nodded, but saw I still looked tense. The exchange in the coffee shop went through my mind. I kept wondering if I made the right choice by leaving. "What's stressing you out then?" Lucas asked when he noticed I wasn't really eating. "Well, I was told that a serial killer was going around. I still need to go to the police station to give my account of what happened. I don't remember anything useful, though. I guess I'm just a little bit freaked out over what could have happened, you know?" My friend paled a little, which was understandable. Anyone would be upset learning how close someone they cared about came to becoming a main topic on a true crime podcast. I considered the stress caused my brain to create the scene in the coffee shop. I got snapped out of my line of thought when I felt a hand on my own and found Lucas suddenly too close for comfort. I did not like the look in his eyes. It wasn't one of concern, but rather a look of want. "I'm glad you called me to stay the night. We can..." I got up from the couch, startling him. Not once did he ever give me the impression of being interested in other guys. I always assumed our relationship was just as friends. If I ignored my no coworkers rule, I still didn't think he was my type. I didn't even have a type, just the occasional drunk hookups. "I don't think I like where your mind is right now," I told him, mouth a bit dry. "Sorry, you must still be freaked out over what happened. That was bad timing. We can take it slow," and I shook my head, cutting him off. "No, I don't think so. This isn't a thing to take slow. I did call you over because I got freaked out over what happened, but I called you over as a friend. Just a friend." I emphasized the last part the best I could. His face turned still. His expression freaked me out more than the monster in the coffee shop. I simply couldn't see any emotions coming from his eyes. How did a person I thought I knew so well could make such an expression? He slowly forced a smile on his face, trying to look understanding. "Just a friend?" he asked in a voice I've never heard from him before. I nodded and found myself backing up. My body reacted to a warning sign my mind hadn't focused on yet. 100 thoughts ran through my head, trying to get out of this situation in the most painless way. After 2 years, I'm just a friend? And yet, you'll pick up anyone from a bar? And go out for coffee with a complete stranger? We've never gone out for coffee. You know that, right? My stomach dropped, and the one slice of pizza I ate threatened to come back up. I never told Lucas about the coffee shop. He should have no reason to know about that. I abandoned all hopes of getting out of this conversation safely. I turned on my heel to run for the front door. I just needed to get out into my apartment hallway. My neighbors should be home by now. They would answer their door, and a hot flash of pain hit my back that caused my entire body to crash down to the floor. I gasped all the air from my lungs, my head hitting the hardwood floor so hard I saw stars. Lucas shoulder-checked the middle of my back, causing us to fall to the ground, his entire body weight on my sore ribs. My struggle to get away started too late. He got an arm around my neck, cutting off my attempts at a scream, my brain too full of fear to understand why this was happening. In a few short seconds, he got me on my back, his forearm pressed under my chin, and his eyes frantic. I choked on my own fear, but thankfully, he hadn't pressed down on my throat just yet. I've known Lucas for 2 years. How did I miss all the signs he was like this? I sputtered, not knowing what to say. "You've always dated girls." He breathed hard, the hot air on my face. A silent rage overtook his entire body, ready to lash out at any moment. He considered my words, wondering if he wanted to let me stall by answering back. "The odd thing is, I do like girls. I've never looked at another guy until you. You're the only guy I have ever liked. You're making me act like this, And you have the nerve to say we're just friends after everything I've done? His arm pressed harder, causing my face to hurt from the lack of air. It was a warning. He lifted the pressure a little to let me breathe again and try to defend myself. I didn't know. If I did know, I would have asked you out, right? You know that. Straight guys really don't like being asked out by other guys. I didn't want to upset you, I said, words shaking. I needed to lie my way out of this. If I could convince him I wanted to date him, then maybe Lucas might let me stand up. I just needed to get into a good position to land a few good punches on him. My hands were free, but he was much stronger than myself. If I tried hitting him now, he could easily knock me out. The best plan was to simply go along with the conversation. I knew this was the only way to make it out alive, and yet the entire idea disgusted me. A hot wave of shame came over my body after I thought of what I needed to do to get free. I never outright said it, but how did you not notice? I was so happy when you called me over tonight, but just friends? His anger grew. He pressed his knee painfully into my stomach. My eyes flooded with tears over the sheer frustration of being so powerless. I raised my hand to his cheek, and that made him lift his knee slightly. You know I'm dense. You don't need to be just a friend. You can stay over like I called you for, okay? But you need to let me up. I won't be able to do much if you carry on like this. I said the first things that came to my mind, praying the tears didn't undervalue my words. For a moment, I thought it worked. He lifted his arm, but still sat on my stomach. His blue eyes a bit clearer than before, and black hair a mess. I made a small motion to sit up on my elbows, thinking of my next actions after I got away. I couldn't forgive myself for getting into danger like this. Suddenly, Lucas reached out a powerful set of hands to wrap around my throat. Any ideas of just going along with his crazy ideas were lost. I kicked under him, my hands going to his wrist to find it impossible to pry his grip away. Tears clouded my vision, then spots of lights darted around my eyes. I'm sorry. I don't trust you. This is the only way to know for sure. I'll have you all to myself. My struggling did nothing. A thin necklace I wore dug into my neck, and the pain flowed through my body. I didn't want to believe I was going to die like this. I trusted this man, and yet... Do you need some help? A low voice came from above me. I smelled the cigarette smoke before I caught a glimpse of the man from the coffee shop. His face in a smile, but not looking as amused as I thought he may be. Lucas paid him no attention, making me assume my mind really did make up Graves because of the stress. The fear of death overtook my reason. If Graves was a demon after my soul, he could take it. I just wanted to live. With seconds before I passed out, I gave a small nod and a silent plea for help from the monster watching us. The moment after I nodded, the world turned dark. All the lights in my apartment went out, and Lucas was suddenly lifted off of my body. I heard him crash down the hallway as if someone just picked him up and threw him. I rolled on my side, coughing and gasping, my entire body shaking from the ordeal. My vision adjusted to the darkness to see the demon of a man standing in the hallway. He made no effort to help me off the ground. I summoned up the strength to sit up. Lucas also recovered enough to get back up. His nose started to drip blood from hitting the floor so hard. His face clearly showed his rage, but he hesitated from charging forward. The stranger who came to my rescue stood still, his face being lit by the glowing cigarette. "Who the hell are you?" Lucas shouted, face twisted in rage. "You'll owe me for this one," Graves said down to me, ignoring Lucas. I nodded again, neck too sore to speak. I didn't know what he wanted in exchange for my life just yet. I doubted it would be much worse than being strangled to death. I asked, Lucas started again, but got cut off. I heard you. It appears I'm the person who arrived in time to avoid little Tracy here from being your sixth victim. Though I bet you're the type to say they all wanted it, Graves spoke in a calm voice. Gray light from the streetlights outside came on and into the hallway. Graves put out his cigarette, then placed the butt back inside the package. I felt so stupid for not connecting all the dots. I assumed Lucas just snapped. I never would have thought he was the killer Graves spoke of, even if all the facts were in front of my face. I nearly got sick over the idea. Lucas gained a shocked expression for a moment over being called out for the murders. He quickly started to speak, trying to defend himself. They did want it. They all asked to come home with me, but I knew all 5 of them wouldn't stay. So what if I made them stay for a while? My chest. It's so empty. You don't understand. I need to fill this hole. I made it so they couldn't leave and filled that hole for as long as possible. Lucas spoke quickly, as if he wanted to get all the words out in as few breaths as possible. 5 men? My best friend killed. 5 men. I bet he drugged them and strangled them while they slept. I didn't want to think of what he did with their bodies afterwards. 4 of his victims had yet to be found, and if Graves didn't show up, I would have joined them. No wonder Lucas attacked me tonight. He feared the police would look closer into people in my life, and he panicked. It's Tracy's fault, Lucas shouted, making me jump. He was the one who made this hole. If he had just gotten my hints, I never needed to do any of this. To my shock, Lucas pulled out a switchblade from his pocket. I shouted out a warning to Graves. My body refused to move, causing me to helplessly watch that short blade sink under Graves's ribs. The man didn't even flinch from the stabbing. He carefully took Lucas by the wrist and refused to let him get away. Oh, so you're the victim here? Graves asked. His voice changed into a tone so deep it was almost hard to make out the words. Did you once consider you're not entitled to another person's feelings? That even if Tracy did know of how you felt, if he didn't feel the same, then it was just tough shit for you. I honestly don't care about pitiful piles of trash like yourself. If you didn't kill those men, you never would have drawn my attention towards you. I honestly could not care about your stupid woes. Now, let me answer your previous question, who the fuck I am. I heard small sounds under Graves speaking. My eyes landed on a shape walking up beside where I sat. I jumped back, seeing a half-rotten skunk standing next to me. Soon, more creatures started to appear in the hallway, crowding us. So many, they filled the open doorways of my apartment. The smell nearly became overpowering. The exposed skulls and teeth clattered together, the sounds mixing into each other. Each eye socket's dark with a single pinprick of white light staring at Lucas shaking in the hallway. I felt a little glad all those eyes weren't on me. Graves got in close to Lucas, his mouth next to the other man's ear as if telling him a secret. I am the one who comes for the likes of you, the humans who disrespect the dead. The last 3 words came out of every creature's rotten mouth, the countless voices mixing in with Graves's, nearly overpowering his deep tone. And the ones who... Graves started again, only to be joined by the mass of voices again to finish his sentence. Leave the dead untombed. The animals with the zombie appearance started to get angry over those statements. So many dead claws reaching out, wanting to dig into Lucas. their teeth clacking together, each creature after warm flesh. I nearly fainted from the sights and sounds around us. I placed hands over my ears, but still heard the rattling. How about we create a new hole in your chest? In exchange, we won't ever let you be alone again. Isn't that nice? Graves pushed Lucas away, the switchblade still sticking inside his chest. The swarm of the dead covered my now ex-friend with their bodies to drag him away into my bedroom, his screams muffled by rotten flesh. He stretched a hand out to grab a hold of the door frame, his nails digging into the soft wood. The animals won out. They pressed him inside, making Lucas rip out some of his nails, leaving them behind in the door frame. The door slammed shut, drowning out his screams with the sounds of the animals. The smell of death disappeared with my apartment returning to normal. A light in the living room flickered on. I wanted to move, and yet my body refused. Graves let out a long, annoyed sigh and pulled out the blade from between his ribs. My brain shut down from the entire sight. My shoulders started to shake, then tears came to my eyes. I only moved my head when Graves got down low to address me. His smile came back to his face, making a new surge of fear come through my body. Now, I do think you owe me a payment. I wonder what I should take. His hand raised, and I backed up against the wall. I hated myself for not being able to do anything but let him reach over. With 2 fingers, he plucked the chain off my neck. With little effort, he broke the chain. He quickly caught the small charm that fell off the thin chain. I shuddered when I remembered that Lucas was the one who gave me the necklace. He said he found it at the bar and offered it to me to sell it. I never got around to pawning it off and took to wearing it. The 2 blood-red stones glittered in the dim light and then disappeared into a gray suit pocket. This is good enough to take. I don't think you'll miss it. Your neck looks better without it. Too bad it's bruised, but it'll... His voice trailed over when my eyes filled with tears. I couldn't stop the sobs from spilling out from my chest. The more I wanted to make the tears stop, the harder the sobs came. The monster had no idea how to deal with someone crying in front of them. I curled up, placing my face against my knees, feeling so stupid for being so blind for 2 years. A hand awkwardly patted my shoulder, causing me to flinch. People died because of me, I said the moment the sobbing let up enough to let me speak. No, people died because that man killed them. You may have given me permission to take him, but I was the one who let part of my Dead Sea to act. I was the one who killed him. You cannot burden yourself over the actions of others. That was a bit too kind for someone like him. Graves gave my shoulder one last pat as a poor attempt in comfort. I really thought he would judge me for getting emotional or even mock my choice of friends. But then I realized that Graves honestly didn't care about any of that. He only wanted to take the man who offended him and rip a murderer apart. My emotional breakdown wasn't a concern. I doubted Graves would even remember me shortly after he left. I rubbed my eyes, feeling miserable, but functional. I should have taken your offer sooner. Why did you come to me now? Why not after the first victim? I asked. Graves shrugged his shoulders. He pulled up a cigarette from the pack, but didn't light it until he stood up and away from myself. There are too many people I can take, and so little time. I don't have a car, so I need to take them down by foot, you know. Also, I can't really act until someone of the living gives me permission. The dead can't avenge their own murder after all. He paused to crack his knuckles before speaking again. I don't blame you for not taking my offer at the coffee shop. I did not have any proof of my statements, and it was logical to assume I was the killer. Being careful isn't a bad thing. If I approached you after the first victim, would you believe me? I would need to drag you to where Lucas had the body, but there was still a risk you sided with your friend. I gave a slight nod at his explanation. Unless I heard Lucas admit his crimes, I wouldn't have really believed he had it in him to do such a thing. I still felt too numb for everything that happened to really sink in. The bruised neck forcing me to accept the attack and the fact my friend had been killing random men. I wanted to cry again just thinking about it. I should have just dated him. If I did, then those people would still be alive, I said, thinking of all the families of the victims. You think so? Graves asked in a light tone. It was an honest question. Lucas might have killed me shortly after we started dating, then went off to kill others. He blamed the killing on his feelings for me, but was that really the reason? Or would he have found something else to kill for? I chewed on the inside of my mouth, trying to think through the entire thing. It didn't feel right to dismiss myself entirely of the blame, no matter how much I wanted to do so. I need to go. More people out there to sink my teeth into, and so little time. I watched Graves head towards the door, not wanting to stop him. I doubted even after the bruise on my neck healed, my memories of this night would fade. Graves paused to look over his shoulder to add one last comment. You should really stop getting wasted at bars. I'm shocked a close friend almost did you in and not one of your random hookups. Before you got drugged, you were hitting on me, you know. Who knows what kind of dangerous person you may take home if you keep up that bad habit. I forgot my misery for a few seconds to get embarrassed for getting called out for my past actions. I ran through my memories trying to think of when I tried to pick up Graves at that bar. After seeing his smile, I realized he lied. I wanted to punch him. He laughed slightly, then left me alone in my empty apartment. I sat on the floor for a long while, just thinking about what happened. Graves saved me, but for his own selfish reasons. The voices of the dead replayed in my mind. Graves avenged 5 men left to rot. A thought came to mind that he would gladly avenge a stray cat tormented to death, or a skunk hit by a car then left to rot. If I wasn't careful, I risked being on the wrong end of his wrath. Anyone could be his target. I worked from home, so I didn't interact with anyone until the bruise healed. No one asked me about Lucas, which I was surprised by. My coworkers assumed he just quit. I thought the cops may come by asking about his disappearance. After 2 weeks, they did a wellness check on his place. During that check, they found a body he let rot in his basement. With some work, they connected to the 5 murders, but 3 bodies were still missing. At least some families got closure on what happened to their loved ones, even if they couldn't bury them just yet. And still, not a single cop came by asking questions. I didn't know if Graves had a hand in that. If he could summon talking zombie animals, then interfering with the police wasn't too out there of an idea. I really don't know if I should be warning others about this man. He might have gone easy on me just because he was having a good day. Honestly, he could have taken anything in exchange for saving my life. For others, he may not be as nice. If you come across him, be careful on the deal he's offering. I don't think he's this kind to everyone, and his kindness left me with nightmares and the need to move apartments. At least I was still alive, and at the end of the day, that was something.